Welcome to the AVForums podcast for the 31st of July 2013. Jesus, will July ever end? Welcome to the AVForums podcast. I'm Phil Hinton, editor of AVForums. And joining me for this genetically modified edition are AVForums assistant editor Steve Withers.
We have a T-Rex.
Games editor Mark Botwright.
I really hate that man.
Games podcast presenter Steve Hill.
They were testing the fences.
Hardware reviewer Ed Selley.
That's the chaos theory.
Clever girl.
That just sounds too wrong. I'm sorry, Phil. That doesn't. We could edit this really badly for you.
Right, okay, let's get cracking. Welcome to the AVForums podcast. Thank you very much for downloading and listening. 6 podcasts in July, which is why I said, will July ever end?
6 podcasts, did you just say?
I said 6. It's
6. My
accent. So that's 5 AVForums podcasts and an AVForums podcast games edition. And we have 2 members of the games team on the podcast tonight. So we have plenty to talk about. Let's move on. Let's go to hardware news first. And a possible 4K Blu-ray system. Now, this is breaking news today from Sony and Panasonic. They are working on a joint venture, now more for a professional storage system for optical disc. They reckon they can get 300 gigabyte on a disc. Now, Steve, you film in 4K. What are you using for storage at the minute, and does this appeal?
We shot 4K for a corporate recently, and we didn't post-produce all the way in 4K. We just went straight down to 2K. But shooting in 4, you get nice sharpness, and the overall quality's that much better. So it makes sense. But for the workflow after that, you kind of really want to go to 2K and no more than that, because otherwise it's just an absolute pain in the arse to work with. But yeah, the solution in this article today didn't really seem like much of a solution to me. I mean, certainly not a domestic solution at any rate, which is kind of what we're all interested in, right?
Well, this is it. I mean, it's been rumoured that for a while, and I think everybody in their dog basically on the internet has jumped on this story because it does give the prospect of a optical disc system for holding 4K films. Now, one thing that is the main criticism with 4K and their proposed delivery systems at the minute, that being downloading and streaming, is that you'd have to compress the hell out of it. And what's the point of having 4K if you're going to compress the hell out of it? Whereas with this disc system, Steve, with it having 300 gig on there, it gives a good opportunity. There'll still be compression, but it gives a good opportunity for the quality to be high.
Yeah, it does feel. I mean, reading through it, it's talking about using 100 gigabyte discs and then multiple discs in a caddy, a bit like a massive 8-track cartridge. I think we all know the technology is there to deliver 4K in a disc-based format. I don't think that's in question, really. You can already do 100 gigabyte Blu-rays, which is obviously 4 layers. There's more advanced compression systems now. Maybe you could find a way of using 2 or 3 additional discs in order to increase the amount of capacity. The problem isn't going to be, I don't think, the technical side of it. I've actually spoke to somebody at Sony who said to me, we can do it, Steve. That's not a problem. The problem is going to be getting the studios to all agree. And that was the problem they had with Blu-ray before that and DVD before that. It's getting everyone behind the A format and having it secure enough that they're happy to put 4K masters out into the market. And I think that's going to be the issue. It's not going to be ultimately technology. It's going to be software, actual content on the discs themselves.
Ed, does this make it any more appealing to you? I mean, we seem to be talking about 4K all the time. Why not? It's the biggest breaking story at the moment. So what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I don't know. I think it's possibly solving half the issue, but it's nowhere near cracking the to me the more relevant point of broadcast. And obviously having a 4K screen for event sort of film watching and the like, there's that if this system brings that slightly closer, then that's to be saluted. But for me, 4K, I'm more excited about the way that's going to hopefully change some sports and some other sort of coverage of standard television. And this doesn't really go anywhere near that. And just reading through the news article, it just there's a lot of extrapolation from what's been done at the moment with these sort of crazy cartridge type things to saying, yeah, it'll definitely sort of wind up being this way and that. And my concerns are that is the demand there for it, and as you say, will everyone actually then agree to get on board with one format, or will we see what is already an uncertain level of demand split into two or more different categories?
Mark, it seems to be at the minute that certainly if you look on the forums, very split opinion and really focused on the 4K element of extra resolution. I mean, what have you read, what have you seen, and what's your opinions on this?
Nil. I'm sorry, I have almost no opinions on it.
And why is that?
Largely because I don't see it as something that's going to translate to gaming, which is kind of really where I'm focusing my attention right now, is with regards how it can affect home setups. I see it as a good kind of 5 years away from us being able to have the screens capable of showing at a size and at an affordability that will make any difference to the large majority of the market. And so therefore it's kind of, it's very much a future concept at the moment for me.
I think it is for everyone though. Production costs on 4K are massive. TV dramas and soaps and documentaries are not going to make the jump to 4K anytime soon, because there's no real point to add that extra production cost, and it's not there in the budget anyway. So I think it's quite mischievous of the manufacturers to be banging on about 4K so much when they know that the infrastructure is not there to deliver the content anyway. It's at least 2 years away from being a consistently used resolution.
I mean, if you don't have TVs and projectors at home people can watch the content on, there's no incentive to make the content in 4K. But conversely, if there's no 4K content to deliver, then people are less inclined to buy the TVs because there's nothing to watch on them. Someone's got to move first.
No, I don't disagree with you, but what I'm saying is it really should be production that ramps up to 4K first, so that the content is there and the back catalogue is there.
Well, there's a back catalogue in terms of TV, in terms of movies. There's 100 years of back catalogue out there.
If it's been shot on film, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, most stuff was shot on film until the last 10 years.
Interestingly enough, the most sought after stuff is going to be the stuff from the last 5 years, and that's certainly not in.
Not necessarily, 4K. I don't think.
But how much of the back catalogue is there that hasn't been put onto Blu-ray yet, though? Because we seem to go through this cycle of, as soon as it seemed like they were exhausting the supply of back catalogue of films for DVD, then we moved on to Blu-ray. But there was a certain amount that never even got really even decent DVD releases. There's a huge amount of films that just kind of fell through the cracks with Blu-ray. And I think, I'm a little bit worried that we're going to move on to the next thing and we're going to find ourselves in, 5-6 years' time having the same kind of debates about grain in film, and people will be able to see it even more then on 60-inch and 70-inch screens, and then it's just going to kind of keep repeating itself.
Has it not been for the last 2 decades, though?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, which is it's changing it. And as soon as people see it more crisply and they see the resolution, all of a sudden it seems like as the picture quality has gotten better, more people have started complaining and saying, well, I don't see grain when I look through my glasses. And then it just worries me that we'll end up with this super crisp version of a film that will actually be further away from what you see at the cinema than anything else.
Yeah, I've got to say that's a very relevant point, and it's something that we've already seen with the introduction of Blu-ray, this whole misunderstanding of film grain, and trying to tell people it's supposed to be there. It's a lot of it, as well as like with these CGI films like the Toy Stories and so on, because they're so crisp and clean, and everybody expects that film's going to look like that. And it's one of these education things. We had it with aspect ratios going back 10 years. You couldn't get a proper aspect ratio, certainly on a VHS release. Laserdisc was the way to go. And even then, Steve, there was still issues with having the black bars top and bottom, so you're going to get the same problems.
Phil, I still get questions from people on the forums about how do I get rid of these black bars at the top and bottom of my screen. And that's now in 2013. People still don't understand that they're supposed to be there. It's a 2.35 to 1 movie. And they're trying to work out how they can zoom it out to get rid of them. And it's like, no. They're meant to be there. Otherwise, you're going to miss the edges of the picture. I find it amazing that that message hasn't got across to everyone yet, but clearly it hasn't.
Although it is far advanced from where it was. Even BBC Three last night, they were showing Wally in the correct ratio. So,
things have changed immeasurably since in the last 10 years, particularly in terms of TV broadcast. TV broadcast never used to be, full letterboxed, and then even when they went to 16:9 ratio, they were still zooming it out to fill that screen. But now most films, at least on BBC and Channel 4, I don't really watch ITV or Channel 5, so I can't comment on those. But BBC and Channel 4 almost always show movies in their correct ratio, which is great.
Yeah. 4K projectors are probably the more exciting thing for me right now. I think that's where it will really excel, and you'll really see some fantastic experiences coming out of. I'm just not convinced the 4K TV is anything I need anytime soon.
Let's move on. Let's talk about streaming, because there were three announcements on the streaming front this past week. The first one was, Steve, you were invited to Central London. Big hoo-ha. Nobody was saying anything. It was a big secret for an LG launch. And what did they launch?
Well, yes, I got there a little bit early, admittedly, but they were still setting up, and they made me sign an NDA, and they said, we can't tell you about it. I said, well, what is it? I've signed the NDA. What is it? No, we can't tell you yet. It's top secret. 6:30 the announcement, and there was a curved OLED in the foyer, and I said, it's not OLED, is it? He went, no, don't worry. I like, thank God for that, because that's been a non-starter for a year and a half now. And then I thought, well, maybe it's something to do with 4K, that's coming up. And then they announced that the Now TV app will be exclusively on LG TVs. So only LG TVs will have the Now TV app on them, despite the fact that you can obviously access Now TV from multiple other devices. That point seemed to miss LG buyers somehow. But they do also provide, if you buy an LG TV from August, not only does it have the apps also will be on last year's generation of TVs as well. But if you buy it in August, you also get, I think it's 3 months for the movies channels, Sky Movies channels. You get those free for 3 months. You also get 3 24-hour passes for Sky Sports.
Wow.
That was their big news. I must admit, having traipsed all the way to London to hear that, I was massively impressed, and then I had to go home again. And that news was kind of slightly limited by the fact that 2 days later, or was it on Friday, Phil? I can't remember now.
It was on the Friday, and it was a good kick in the nuts.
So that was on the Wednesday night. LG announced that. Friday, you can buy a Now TV box for £9.99p. I think LG maybe... I don't know if they knew what Now TV were doing, because if they did, I don't know why they bothered. And they didn't. They must be absolutely furious with them at the moment.
And what was the last one, Steve? There was another announcement.
And the other sort of streaming area is that Chromecast has been released now, which is Chromecast is Chrome's little USB attachment. Basically, it's like their version of Apple's AirPlay, allowing you to stream content to your TV or whatever from mobile phone or from your PC or tablet. It looks quite interesting. I did take a look at some reviews of it, and it seemed a bit limited at the moment. It's only got Netflix and Netflix, YouTube, and Chrome's own downloading service. That's all it's currently got in terms of apps on it. So it's a bit limited at the moment. Obviously, it's only just launched. I'm sure it'll develop from that, but at least it gives an alternative to AirPlay, which is pretty dominant at the moment, and particularly obviously if you have an iOS device. But you can use it with iOS devices, Chromecast. So it's just an alternative to AirPlay, basically.
And of course, that's coming in at $35 as well, which is really not a lot of money.
Competitive pricing, isn't it?
Yeah,
I can't believe the Now box though is $9.99. That's basically they're giving it away.
Yeah, which is obviously based on the Roku box, isn't it? So
yeah,
$9.99, guys, for a little streaming box. You interested?
Niente, not for me. No thanks.
But it was you, Steve, that pointed out that the Sky had some plans up their sleeves, and this is obviously one of them.
Yeah, I just thought they were really well positioned in the marketplace, and it wasn't a big surprise to see it come out. I was surprised at the price, but then, so many people are going to see that and think, oh, what's a tenner? I'll go for it. And then they'll probably be doing deals where they'll give it away with new subscriptions. You might choose this over a multi-room box, for example. I think it's a clever move, and it doesn't really surprise me at all.
The main thing is, why would you go and buy a smart TV now? your TV is going to last a couple of years, go and buy yourself a little streaming box like this, and you've got your smart TV.
Yeah, if you want access to Sky stuff, I mean, you think about it, a Roku is 89 quid, I think. This is a tenner. Obviously, that's the difference in price is being eaten by Sky. But, if you just if you use their 24-hour film sports pass a few times and maybe go for a couple of months' worth of movies, you've already covered the cost of the box. So I guess they want it like the first taste is for free, isn't it? It's like
no
a drug
HD,
dealer. That's true.
No,
that is one of the
no HD.
points. Yeah, that's a very good point, Steve. It isn't HD. It's only standard definition, which again was raised at the LG launch. And the guy from Now TV said, "Oh yeah, we're only at standard definition at the moment," which is is in fact a major, in my opinion, disadvantage since most people now have high def TVs.
But it must be coming, because I used Now TV back a couple of months back for the playoff semi-final between Palace and Brighton. Eagles, and it was 100% HD in that stream for sure. So, and that was off a PC plugged into my living room TV. So surely it must be something which is quite...
There's no reason why they can't do it in high definition.
Yeah, exactly. So I was surprised that they haven't got it ready for this rollout, and I think it's a bit of a missed trick as well, actually.
I've noticed that I went and had to look on their website after the launch on Wednesday night, so this was on Thursday, and they are, they don't mention anywhere that it's only standard definition. Probably in the small print somewhere, but I couldn't find it being mentioned anywhere. So they are quite slightly disingenuous, I think, when it comes to promoting this service. But basically, it's a way of accessing Sky content without having to have a satellite dish or be a Sky customer.
For a tenner, though, I could probably forgive that. I mean, it just has kids' bedroom. So if you want to watch X, find the money, scrape it together, and away you go. I think pointing it at this price point, it's either going into households where I suspect there isn't that much HD viewing going on anyway, or it's second, third system string further down the line convenience rather than outright last word in picture quality. Just a gut feeling.
Well, one point I made on the comments of the news story, Ed, was that there's probably a massive percentage of people that have probably got a streaming solution but don't realise it. If you're a bit of a technophobe in this country, you probably rely on Sky for your HD viewing. You just kind of pay your money and just take it at face value, and they're probably just going to take Sky's word on this being a great solution for them going forward, and because it's going to be easy for them as already being Sky customers, they've probably got a really, really big potential marketplace there.
Yeah, I reckon you're probably right.
As much as I hate Murdoch, even I might get one, because there's a big rugby match on Sky and I want to watch it, can't bother to go to the pub. Maybe I should get the 24-hour pass instead.
But the 24-hour pass is a tenner, for that pass.
Yeah, no, but where I live, if I'm going to go to the pub, I've got to get a taxi and taxi back, and that's like 40 quid gone already. Then there's all the boozing. So cost-wise, it's probably cheaper if we just get the pass and drink a few beers on the sofa.
At home on your own.
I've got no mates. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say at home on your own. There you go.
But on a wider level, it's like there was a lot of initial excitement, as you say, and then it's like you realise that actually at the moment it's quite limited. There's a lot of cool features, but it's missing X, it's missing Y. We're looking at this £10 box. It's standard def only. Some of the on-demand pricing is a bit confusing. Apple TV's been out in the market for a long time now, but it still is a bit limited in other ways, and it's like, well, I can have a stack of these little sods, but it rather sort of loses the convenience thing when you're sort of sifting through.
This is the whole thing about why we haven't seen an Apple TV yet, because that was the intent, was to have everything under one roof, and it ain't going to happen because everybody's splitting off into their own ways. Why is it that someone like Apple or Google haven't bought Netflix? You would think it would make sense.
But I mean, there must be a reason, because both of these guys have got more money than sense, so that they could just go in, cash deal, bosh, and just have that solution straight away. And whoever does that must be in an incredibly strong position.
Netflix at the same time is not. It in many ways is actually, it started as a more convincing solution than it arguably is now. In trading off and getting some more big sort of name things in. One of the joys of Netflix always used to be watching something you last saw when you were 11 or at 2 a.m. as a student whilst chemically inconvenienced, and it was there, and because it cost the square root of sod all to license, it was sort of considered. And now they're sort of gunning for more serious and highbrow things. This sort of starts to be pared back and cut back. And
I still use it for documentaries and foreign films and that kind of thing that I wouldn't buy in disc, but I quite fancy seeing. And in terms of big name stuff, I think there's only House of Cards and the new series which is just launched, Orange something.
Orange is the New Black, which I watched and thought was superb. There was Hemlock Grove, which is Eli Roth's series, which is also exclusive to Netflix. There was the new season of Arrested Development, which Netflix funded, which again was absolutely superb. So the stuff they're producing, it's not a lot of it yet, it's still a small scale, but it is absolutely superb. I mean, there's no question about the quality of the content they're producing. It's whether they, and if they keep on doing it like that and creating exclusive content that's high quality, really good TV, then they're going to create a market for themselves just on the basis of that alone.
They're still not big enough to resist being bought out by Apple or Google or somewhere. So I'm wondering, there must be a reason why it's not happened. Maybe there's some kind of clause or law that stops them. I'm not sure.
Well, it needs somebody like that to come in and change the game and basically bring all these services under one roof, if that's ever going to be possible. Yeah. And to be honest, I think with the music industry, I think Apple did that with iTunes, and they did that because basically the music industry were over a barrel because of the whole piracy thing, and we're quite happy to go with a paid model that iTunes brought. But when it comes to TV, movies and all the rest, I just think there's so many fingers and so many pies and so many different rights issues and international rights issues and all the rest. I don't see it happening, unfortunately.
Do you not think, though, as broadband speeds get quicker, that in fact the piracy issue will reach that tipping point that perhaps they will have to bargain? Because, I mean, the whole point with music was that you could download an album in very fast time. Whereas, if with people with HD screens, if you want to download a film in HD, it's still, what's the average now? Something about 7 megs or something still for the UK. That's still taking you a long time. Once you get to that point where everyone's on, fiber optic broadband and speeds are 20 plus for the majority, I think, piracy will skyrocket again, and you will start to see people start to question how much they're losing in revenue. Yeah,
that is a good point. There's actually a service in the US which is potentially going to change the battlefield, and it's difficult to explain in a podcast how it actually works, but basically what they're doing is they're taking all the over-the-air TV channels and then offering you a very cheap subscription to get all the over-the-air stuff, including cable channels and so on. It's only in specific cities at the minute, but it's already been up in the High Court and the Supreme Court in the US. That's going to be interesting to see how they judge on the copyright front and streaming and that kind of thing, because basically it looks highly illegal, but knowing the legal system, you never know which way it's going to fall down and in whose favour.
Well, it's funny how some people, certainly HBO, seem quite proud of the fact that Game of Thrones is the highest pirated TV show in the world. Clearly, they're comfortable with the fact that they've already got the money they made from the subscribers, their subscriber base in the US, and for the money they made selling as people like Sky for the UK. There's the Blu-ray coming out in February, as I said, and I guess they just consider the downloading and piracy part as just building up demand for the disc release later in the year. I guess they're happy with it.
Yeah,
doesn't seem to bother them at all.
It seems a bit strange. But anyway, moving on. We have a Now TV box coming in for review, so look out for that. It will be arriving this week, and we'll hopefully get the review up before Friday. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in the Now TV box. We'll move it on, and we'll be back in a sec. So moving on, and so Steve, what's at the cinema?
Well, this week, Phil, it's The Wolverine, which is actually a direct sequel to X-Men Last Stand, although obviously the rest of the X-Men aren't in it, but it has various plot points that carry over from that previous film. Is it any good? It's a significant improvement on X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is a bit of a mouthful, which I thought was very poor. I actually thought the Wolverine was very good. I really enjoyed it. It's based upon a comic arc about Wolverine in Japan, and the film predominantly takes place in Japan, which obviously, as you all know, I used to live there, and and there's actually some really nice shots of Tokyo, and not the usual neon lit, Ginza stuff, but actually things like Tokyo Tower.
Is your old flat in there? Is it? Did the film?
No, I didn't see that. I did look out for it. But there's one bit where they leave a shrine in what is in the shadow of Tokyo Tower, which is just off of Roppongi, and the next thing they know, they're in sort of in Shibuya, which is about sort of 10 miles away. So some of the geography was a bit off. But yeah, it's set in Japan. It's actually quite for a comic book movie. There's some genuine depth to it. I mean, they try and address issues like the fact that Wolverine, or Logan as his name really is, is effectively immortal because his body keeps repairing itself, dealing with loss and immortality. Are interesting points the film makes. It's got some great action set pieces. There's a couple of subplots that it could have done without. And it's got a great opening at Nagasaki, as in the bombing of Nagasaki, which is in the trailer, so this isn't a spoiler. Although they seem to be more aware of what's going on than I think people would have been back in 1945, given that the only thing that happened prior to that was Hiroshima, and everyone didn't really know about the effect of atomic bombs yet. But yeah, it's certainly it's well made. I thought it was very exciting in places. I thought Hugh Jackman was on top form, really, really massively bulked up for this. He had more time than normal to prepare for it, and he really went for it in terms of physique. The supporting cast, most of whom were relatively unknown and actually Japanese, which is a nice change, were very good. And it has a fantastic post-credit sequence that sets up X-Men: Days of Futures Past, which is the next film that's coming in the series with Bryan Singer returning to the fold as director. And yeah, there's a huge post-credit sequence that's very important. So make sure you stick around. If you're going to see it in the movies, make sure you stick around for the credits. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Steve Hill, I suspect not so much.
I thought the beginning was really, really strong and really moving. I mean, obviously it's a pretty horrific thing you're witnessing, but yeah, it was very well handled and a cool scene. But it was just all downhill from there. I thought it was really slow and poorly written, and the action was just kind of a bit by numbers, really. It was a big disappointment for me. And also, yes, he does look in great shape, but Hugh Jackman is getting on a bit for me. Like, he looks a bit veiny and a bit Stallone-like with his shirt off. I just, Wolverine's supposed to never get any older, but Hugh Jackman quite clearly is. I just don't know how many more of these movies he's got in him. So, but he's done pretty well out of it.
It's obviously in Days of Futures Past, but I think that could be it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, maybe.
Getting on a bit, yeah. I mean, what he was doing apparently was doing that thing where you don't drink any fluids for 38 hours before they shoot the shirtless scenes, which I think was what Daniel Craig was doing on some of the shots in the Bond movies. Right. So you don't drink any liquids. So you're basically totally dehydrated, which means the skin sticks really tight to the muscles to make you look as huge as possible. Hence
I mean, it was like looking in a mirror many stages. My wife kept sort of saying, he's almost as ripped as you. So
there is a review of it up on the forums by Chris McAnini. Obviously, Chris is a big Wolverine fan. There's also a photograph on the review of Chris as Wolverine.
Wolverine's not ginger, though, is he?
Sorry?
He's not ginger.
He's not as short our Scouse either, but
yeah, a podgy shot. Yeah, he hasn't got the reps, has he?
Chris liked it, by the way. I didn't read the whole review; it's like way too long. But I read the conclusion, and he from what I read, he had the same views as me. I think in terms of it's it is definitely a big improvement on the previous Wolverine movie. I think it has some interesting points. The fact it was slow in places, Steve, was good. I mean, it had the courage to take its time and not always be rushing, which was a nice change this year.
Yeah. It does make me sound like I'm a bit of a small-minded cinema guy. That really wasn't it at all. Like I'm totally down for the kind of more cerebral, emotional side of it. It didn't feel like it quite hit the points for me. But I do agree with you that post-credit scene made the whole journey worth it for me. I'm so excited for the new one.
So there you go, Phil. Short and sweet. Why are you sighing?
Well, it's another bloody superhero film, isn't it? I mean, when are they going to
There's lots more coming. Get used to it.
Jesus, wept. Some originality, please.
Well, they are painting themselves into a corner, and I think the only place left to go is if films like The Avengers and maybe Justice League or Civil Wars, which is like one where it just all goes completely off. And I think to an extent some of that stuff's a bit unfilmable, and that might be what makes it implode on itself. So I don't know, maybe another couple of years.
We did actually say that last week, Steve, you were on that podcast, but I think it was Ed who said that eventually a superhero film will come out that will bring down the entire cycle by being a massive bomb.
I'll put my money on Superman versus Batman. That's the one that'll do it.
I wouldn't bet against you on that. I've got to be honest.
Yeah, I've got no interest in that at all. It just sounds like a terrible, terrible idea.
Really bad idea. Yeah, Zack Snyder in charge of it. If nothing else means it's going to be.
So Wolverine scores on the doors. Chris gave it a 7. Steve?
Yeah, I'd say 7 or 8 definitely for me. Yeah.
Steve?
A 5 or a 6. I mean, it's enjoyable, but it's not amazing.
You can read Chris's review. It's up there now, avforums.com/movies. Moving on quickly with some other movie news. Last weekend, in terms of our recording time, was Star Wars Celebration 30, which was held in Essen in Germany. Good excuse for nerds to go and dress up as their favourite Star Wars characters. Not a lot of news coming out on this, which was quite surprising, seeing as you would think that they would try and start to build up the hype machine for Episode 7. The only bit of news really coming out of there was that John Williams is going to score Episode 7. Kathleen Kennedy was there, didn't really give anything away in terms of what to expect. So in terms of Episode 7 hype, it was a bit disappointing.
Well, let's be honest, with J.J. Abrams in charge of the next movie, given his history of keeping things very close to his chest, wasn't surprised about that. Also, not exactly massive surprise John Williams is doing the music. I mean, I'd have been surprised if he wasn't doing the music. Just hope he can live long enough to do the 8th and 9th ones as well. Yeah, I think it's just Disney being canny. I
wasn't aware that Logan's Run worked for film composers, but okay, that's fine.
Was that not 30 though? He's 70 odd.
Well, it's obviously you get a bit longer if you're a film score composer, but it makes it sound like that there's someone coming for him.
He would be reborn in the fiery renewal of Carousel, won't he?
Well, you see, what I thought they might have done was go with the guy who scored the Clone Wars, the animated series, because he did a really good job, and that's where I thought they would go with that. But
he's
the
busy
same bloke that
scoring
did Game of Thrones, isn't it?
Is it?
And what's it, Ramesh?
Diwani.
Yeah, is it the same guy?
Very talented guy. I don't know how to pronounce his game. I apologise to him, but very talented guy.
Speaking of Clone Wars, Phil, didn't you also see some artwork from the new Star Wars animated series?
Star Wars Rebels it's called. Now, a lot of rumours that this was supposed to be the TV series that they were going to do, the long rumoured live-action TV series. But it turns out it's going to be animated. It's called Star Wars Rebels. And there's some concept artwork online at the minute. It looks interesting. I would say I enjoyed the Clone Wars, what I've seen of it. I haven't seen the whole thing. A lot more than I enjoyed the prequels, that's for sure. So.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm currently on season 4 of the Clone Wars, and I am enjoying it. Unfortunately, season 5 is the last one because obviously that was being produced by Warner Brothers and the Cartoon Network, and obviously Disney have cancelled it on the basis of that. So the 5th season is the last season. There's rumours they might do a film or something because there's still stuff they got prepared. They had prepared for season 6, but obviously haven't used. But Dave Filoni, who was doing that, is now doing Star Wars Rebels, which is set between 3 and 4. It's about the early days of the rebellion. There is still a possibility of the Star Wars Underworld, which was going to be the live action series set in the obviously the underworld of the sort of period between 3 and 4. Possibly might still see that, but it sounds like what Disney are going to do now instead is produce one-off films. So you'll get like episode 7 and then a film about one of the, I don't know, Boba Fett or whatever, and then episode 8 and then another film about another character, and then episode 9. So not dissimilar to what they've been doing with the Marvel universe in terms of Iron Man 3, then Thor, and then the Avengers, etc. Which would be fun by me. I don't mind having a Star Wars movie every year. That'd be great.
So they're almost ahead of their own curve, really. They've created the comic book craze, and then they're going to do this Star Wars thing. It's quite clever, really.
I think Disney can make more money than God over the next couple of years.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned on the last podcast, if the rumor is true that they're bringing out the original versions of Star Wars, Empire, and Return of the Jedi, then they're going to make an absolute boatload on that, because I'll be spending my money on that one, that's for sure. So what did surprise me was the lack of hype and you would think that that was definitely the place that they would start to hype it up and get people excited. But news-wise, it didn't generate an awful lot.
Maybe everyone's just a little bit scared now. We've been burnt once by the prequels. We don't want to get our hopes up too much in case they're rubbish.
Just coming back to John Williams being old. How old's Harrison Ford these days?
He's in his 70s.
1942 he was born. So
71.
One.
Right, so he might just make the one movie then. Is that what you're saying, Steve?
Well, I mean, I don't know. They got old Christopher Lee in the Hobbit, haven't they? I mean, basically they had to sit him down. All of his scenes involved him being sat down because he's so old now that he can't walk or move. I mean, about a Zimmer frame or something.
It put a lot of effort into recording that latest metal album he did, so that takes it out of it. Have you heard that? It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable good or unbelievable bad?
It's certainly worth listening to at least once. Surreal is a good word, but that doesn't do justice to the fact that he has clearly put a lot of effort into it. It's quite proggy in a way, and every now and again I quite like that sort of thing. And hats off to him. The man is extremely old, and he's making a thrash metal album. Brilliant.
Has it compared to William Shatner's musical output?
Well, again,
you kind of beat the shot.
That's just genius, though. You can't top genius.
It's an apples and oranges thing. I mean, Shatner's Rocket Man still one of the finest things ever recorded. But there's a place in the musical pantheon for both of these greats, I'd say.
So I'm just thinking about Stewie doing Rocket Man. of William Shatner, which I think is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life.
Have you not seen the real one?
Yeah, that's even funnier.
I say the real one, I mean Shatner's version, not actually the real one. But yeah, you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah. That is surreal.
Yes.
The other interesting thing that came out of Celebration Europe was a photograph of all the old cast members, and Mark Hamill. He looks like, what's his face, the old stuntman. Lee Majors. He's an absolute spit for Lee Majors. He's really piled the weight on, as has Carrie Fisher. So, if they're going to be,
are we starting some kind of Star Wars Deadpool here? Right, Mark Hamill, heart disease. Christopher Lee, old age. John Williams falls into a timpani drum. That's it.
Well, what about Carrie Fisher? She's got to go out with a bang. Looking at what's happened to her since the original films.
As long as they don't put her in a metal bikini, I think we'll be fine.
Oh, dear God, no. She's put on the weight since she got off the cocaine, hasn't she?
I think there's a bit of plastic surgery there as well. If you manage to track down that photograph, the lips on her, my God.
Oh dear. She was never a looker to start with, was she? No offence to any fans out there of Leia, Princess Leia.
Oh, I don't know. I thought she was quite hot in Empire.
Really? Because I've got this rule, my friend and I developed this set of rules about how to make movies, and it was basically like, always keep it moving, have a really good supporting cast, get in a fit bird, guaranteed box office. All the great films have those factors in them.
It's your mate Michael Bay.
I'd put in a giant robot, obviously.
That sounds pretty close to his ethos.
Does he refuse to enter a room without an explosion first?
He got offered the chance to direct the film phone booth, and his first comment was, "How do I get this film out of this effing phone booth?" The Rock is a masterpiece. Armageddon's a masterpiece.
Amazing, yeah.
So let's crack on with some tech news. iPhone 4, iPhone 5C, iPhone 6, Sky HD with built-in Wi-Fi, and porn sites are more popular in the UK than social networks. That's your tech news. Let's go to iPhone first. Okay, so lots of stories popping up. Funnily enough, if you look at the average tech site, they will have a story about the iPhone 5S, and 2 stories up, they'll have another story about the iPhone 6. So what is happening with the iPhone? Does anybody really care? 5C, iPhone 5C is going to be the cheap version. Now, this kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Because if you look at the Galaxy phones, line of phones, and the new Galaxy 4 that everybody's going mad about, it's made of plastic, and it feels cheap compared to if you pick up an iPhone. So with the iPhone 4 getting cheaper, and they're going to bring this 5C out allegedly, which is going to be $199, they could make a killing here.
I think they've missed a trick though. 5C, so what is it? 5 cheap? Is that I mean, obviously, it's a working title. But
You're right.
That's it. The iPhone 5 cheap. Yeah.
It seems a bit, let's be bold here. When a car manufacturer decides to rip everything out in the name of cost and then ambitiously charge still a high price for it, it's a Type R or a Superleggera or something like that. Apple need to be more unashamed in the fact that they're giving you something lightweight and made out of plastic and they're still charging you a lot of money for it. So they need to be more ambitious with the name. Definitely.
The iPhone 6 Power Glove.
No, they could call it a C5.
And for that one, yeah, good one. And for those under 40, explain it.
Yeah. Okay, for those of you who don't know what a C5 is, it was a rubbish, basically like electric powered bicycle.
Trike.
Take that back.
Trike.
It was forerunner to the Segway.
Developed by Sir Clive Sinclair. As this follow-up to some personal computers he used to make. It was ridiculous. You would have got soaking wet. You would have got taken you 10 hours to get around the corner, and you looked like a complete tit. Apart from that, it was obviously going to be a big seller.
When I was 11-year-old, old guy that lived in the mansion round the corner. We didn't live in a mansion, by the way. We just lived in the street, but there was this mansion house.
You in the servants' quarters.
But there was this mansion house at the side of the estate, and he had his old rickety garage, and he bought one of these C5s, and he actually used it. You would see him tittering about the town on his C5, and he looked an absolute the guy was in his 70s, but you got to say it was ahead of its time. I mean, look at where we are now in terms of electric cars and all the rest of it. It was ahead of its time.
Oh, no question. And I will state in public on a podcast that if the opportunity to own a working one for Sensible Money came up, I just, for the sheer 80s joy of it, I'd love to have one. But the problem is that most of them apparently have been turned into plant pots these days. You go to, I know at least one. There's one in a pub near me where it's got just a big sort of forsythia growing out of it. It's certainly different, but yeah, I make no bones about it. It was way ahead of its time, and it's so uncool. It's arguably cool. C5. Well, I'd rather have a C5 than a cheap iPhone, I guess.
A C5 than a 5C.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the forerunner to this, Steve, is obviously that the iPhone 4 has led to iOS being used a lot more because obviously the price is dropping now. You've got the 4S and the 5 ahead of it in the lineup, so you can get it fairly cheap now on fairly cheap contracts. It seems to be a lot of people are buying into it.
They might be, Phil, but the question is going to be when they launch iOS 7, which is in a few months. I always tend to find that when they bring out a really big revised version of the operating system, that the older phones run really slowly. I used to have a 3S, and when they brought out the last version, it just started to run really slowly. So that could annoy quite a few iPhone 4 owners, I think, in the next few months.
Well, I've got 4. It looks like I'm going to have to upgrade.
Yeah, you are.
I just haven't bothered. I mean, the only difference between the 4 and the 4S and the 5 being a little bit bigger was Siri. That was the only thing that they seem to update on it, so
which wouldn't work with you because of your accent.
Yeah, well, that's it. 11. What? Cuddly Burley.
Pardon.
So that's iPhone. Lots of news at the minute about that. Now, is it going to be a 5S? Is it going to be a 6 that announced in September? And do we give a damn?
No.
Well, it could well be that it'll be a 5C and a 6. Maybe go for hammer the market.
But it's always big news. I mean, I'm for all my disdain, I, like Phil, still have an iPhone 4, but I haven't yet really felt compelled to chop it in. And I've got to be honest, I'm looking at the stuff available. I'm more tempted by one of the Google Nexus phones than I am a new iPhone. So they are going to have to do something a bit more interesting.
The one I find interesting at the minute is the HTC One.
That does look quite cool.
It's a beautiful phone. I had a go on one recently. One of the journalists had a review phone. I said, let's have a look at that. Really nicely built, brilliant build quality. Seemed to have all the features that you would want. So that one appealed to me, I've got to say.
You don't want to go left field and have a BlackBerry Z10
or a Windows phone.
Oh no!
Just steady.
Be ahead of the curve.
More of the same. I think sooner or later they've got to innovate. They've got to do something different. I think it's going to end up with them flogging this dead horse, and it'll all implode again. And Apple will just have to look to diversify somewhere else. I'd assumed by this point we would have the Apple TV kind of dominating things. I assumed by this point there would be something more than a smaller version of the iPad or a bigger version of the iPhone. It just seems like, should we say, all of these different patent issues, they've not been able to lock down any features that don't end up on Android anyway. The best they can really hope is to keep hold of their market share and keep Windows Phone under their heel.
Well, I mean, just look back at what the phones were like before the iPhone came along. And Jobs said it himself when they launched it. He said, look, we're five years ahead of the curve here. And the iPhone's 5 years ahead of the curve. And then you had the App Store start up and all the functionality that it had and all the... they had something really, really special. And like you say, Mark, they've done nothing with it, really.
No, I'm waiting for that kind of one killer app. We seem to have kind of fallen into this strange malaise of just talking about, well, what's the latest app that kind of piques people's interest. There's nothing really that's selling itself as you definitely have to upgrade your iPhone because you have to have this app. We've gone from the point of people saying, well, yes, you've got Siri, yes, you've got your music on there, you can do that with other phones. What is it? Facial recognition on phones and the like. And it's got to that point where I think almost in a strange way you've exhausted what you actually need the phone for. It was that point at which they caught up with technology that you've got on your PC, and now it's got to the point where they're in fact ahead of some of the things that your PC will do or your tablet will do. But the question is, what's the great need there? They're kind of now starting to answer questions that aren't even being asked.
Yeah, very much so. And you just have to look at the competition to see that, because they might have been 5 years ahead when they initially launched the iPhone. Everybody's caught up with them now. Some of them even surpassing them. But it seems to be that certain manufacturers are looking for certain niches. I mean, there was the 41 megapixel camera that was it Nokia announced the other day.
Yeah, it was Nokia.
So they're looking to take that market segment. Windows Phone is just dying on its arse because it has no applications. It has no decent apps. And
so I can ask a question. What's the point of a 41 megapixel camera with a crappy little lens?
Well, that's it. What is the point?
I mean, a complete waste of time.
Yeah, but there again, you could say the same thing about what's the point of a personal music player that had lousy audio quality, and everyone else, of the 100 million that are selling it, 99.9% are using the $2 headphones that come with it.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody knows me, they know that I carry a camera about all the time, whether it's a DSLR, whether it's a video camera, whatever. If I'm out and about, I've always got my camera with me. And on the times that I don't, then the iPhone takes a perfectly good enough photograph for shoving up online or taking a photograph of the family and so on. So where's the innovation?
I think half the problem is that the iPhone gained its initial advantage by being a closed doors project where essentially there was some thinking done outside the box and it pushed the game on considerably. But over time, that closed approach suffers in comparison to a more open platform, in so much as if you've only got a fixed number of innovators on the outside, then there's going to be some problems. Whereas it must be said that Android obviously also suffers from the fact that there's lots of people tinkering with it, and not all of them know what they're doing. But there are some good ideas coming out, and there are certain things that are being pushed on, which you're not necessarily seeing with iOS because it's a much more sort of limited phase of development.
You can never count Apple out. There's always that chance that they've got something else in the background, something else that we just haven't thought of. And who knows? Maybe it's something like an iWatch, or I don't know. Who knows?
Well,
you never know with those guys.
We laughed at that, didn't we? And we took fun of that a few podcasts back. The iWatch, the smartwatch, and who wears a watch and all the rest of it. But I guess we would have said the same about the iPad. When Steve Jobs stood up there with this iPad, everybody was thinking, well, what the hell's that for? But then look at the market now. Look at how many people are bringing out tablets. All the different versions of them, bigger sizes, smaller sizes, and all the rest of it. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really think we're going to see another iPhone in terms of all that innovation straight away launched on the market again. I don't think we're going to see that from Apple. But, yeah, don't write them off. Let's move on. Let's go back to Sky. new HD box with built-in Wi-Fi coming in September. Are we excited, guys?
They aren't going to give me one for free, no.
What amazes me is not so much the Sky HD box hasn't got Wi-Fi, although that surprises me in itself. I'm just staggered that the UView box doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi. It just seems like these days built-in Wi-Fi, that's just a given. And if a product doesn't have it, then it's in the Stone Age. I mean, everything should have built-in Wi-Fi now. Hate Sky. So.
You don't hate Sky. You just live in a listed building where you can't put a dish up. That's what's wrong. You hate everybody else because they get it. Let's move on. And this seems to be everybody's favourite subject at the minute. Porn sites more popular in the UK than social networks. Tell us all about it, Ed.
Thank you.
Take your power glove off.
Excellent. Well, I have to say I've not been following this one as closely as I might, perhaps because I've been spending so much time looking at pornography. But it doesn't necessarily surprise me, and it does ask some questions. Just how much of the internet are they going to try and filter and restrict if Mr. Cameron's wonderful blocker comes in? So,
Oh,
let's trademark that name.
Blocker Cameron. Yeah, that's his name.
So no, I honestly thought that we were moving away from this. I mean, it used to be a standing joke that you bought a computer with the internet, and that was your recreational literature sorted, and you could do some other things on it as well. But no, it does appear to be the case. And one thing, I don't know if it's necessarily a result of this article. I think it's more of an international thing. But what is interesting and has been remarked upon is that there are the boundaries about where porn ends and sort of social network stuff begins is increasingly blurry as well. I mean, obviously, I have to say I've never used Snapchat in any way, shape or form, but it does appear to be a sort of go-to point for just some random pornography between like-minded individuals if they fancy it. And Vine is also having to make some sort of effort to try and not be that as well. And obviously Yahoo, having bought Tumblr, suddenly realised that, 40% of Tumblr sites are, if not directly pornography, have something to do with pornography. And obviously Yahoo's attempt to be as family friendly as Mr. David Cameron is that's a bit of a problem. As I understand it, a number of unguarded pornography Tumblrs have already been deleted from existence whilst they try and sort of family friendly it up.
Never heard of Snapchat.
It's isn't it? It's for sending instantly deleted pics between suitably app-equipped phones.
We're ahead of me now.
And as I say, I've never used it either, but it's made headlines on a number of occasions because it's supposed to warn the person that sent the photo if the person you've sent it to takes a screen grab of it.
Right.
But it appears to be sort of that appears to be under slightly. It's not as bomb-proof as was originally claimed. So yes,
it's mostly shots of people's is or something like that.
No, that's chat. But it's basically.
You seem very well versed in all this. I have to say, I've got no idea what you're talking about.
This is why I was the go-to guy for it. So yeah, I'm younger than you. So it's
and therefore more virile.
Therefore, I have more time to look at porn.
Yes, well, I've got a lot more experience in that department.
But it doesn't surprise me. But whether people are actually looking at good old-fashioned classic porn, or if it's actually they're now looking at stuff which, depending on how liberal you're feeling and what your definitions are, could actually be also counted as social networking at the same time. And I don't know whether this article necessarily framed that in the correct context.
There was an interesting rebuttal to Cameron's thing last week. I mean, lots of websites, lots of blogs and everything writing about how it wasn't going to work and so on. We know it's not going to work. It's completely there's no way you can police it, basically. But the interesting article was that a lot of these porn sites and these producers back in the day when the internet was young actually helped develop stuff like secure payment methods, video players, flash players, and so on. Helped develop streaming technology. So what the article was basically saying was, if it wasn't for the porn sites and the early development of porn, we wouldn't have half the functionality we have now.
No, it's true.
No, I think that's
Pornography's
very fair.
always been at the cutting edge of technology. I think within 3 years of the first movie, cinema film or motion picture being presented, there was 3D motion porn. So, always at the cutting edge. And I thank God for that.
I wouldn't say necessarily cutting edge. They would probably be using the technology in the worst possible way, but they would be there.
I don't know. The online payment stuff is absolutely bang on. They had online payment and site security far in advance of any other aspects of e-commerce for ages and ages and ages. And when when certain companies moved into online retail, I was going to say beat a path, but I'm sure that's a euphemism and shouldn't be used anyway.
Yeah,
they went to the pornography industry to work out how it was being done with any degree of efficiency and security.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think the point I was making is that John Stagliano is not out shooting Martin Scorsese, for example.
Who is John
No, it's just not what I meant, though. I
Stagliano?
didn't say it had any artistic merit. I just meant they were using the technology.
Surely we learnt last week that pornography can't have artistic.
That's the
was what you told
definition.
us.
That's the definition, yeah.
Oh, is that the literal definition?
It's something that it's something that has no artistic merit but causes sexual thought.
Like Hollyoaks.
Well, I was going to say that's every advert I've ever seen. I mean, you remember the old Flake adverts? Come on, guys.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about chocolate. I'll tell you that much for nothing.
Oh, this is Cadbury's and it's horrible. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
It was the animated bunny for caramel that did it for me.
It's all coming
You in
out
your own
now.
time, Phil, is none of our business.
The Caramac one.
No, the caramel bunny with the West Country accent. See, that always put me off.
I don't know what to say to that.
There is no comeback. That's it. Thank you and good night.
It was Caramac, wasn't it?
Cadbury's caramel.
Caramac.
Caramel.
No, that's a whole different thing.
It's a whole different thing. That
No sexy bunnies on that one.
No, I
Oh,
know.
that's not very nice
Believe me,
chocolate,
I know my chocolate.
Caramac's not Cadbury's anyway, it's Nestle.
We've gone down a cul-de-sac here.
Yeah. I tell you, who knows the most about chocolate are the two fattest buggers on this conversation. No offense, boys.
It's all right, you bald.
Yeah, harsh but fair.
Be interested though on this whole idea about more internet traffic, how much say of the dodgier sites add towards those statistics, because the same with like piracy sites, there's a certain amount of non-user kind of agreed to redirects and the like that must obviously shoot up certain amount of numbers.
And if it was getting that much traffic, like surely city bankers would be fighting over each other to buy up shares, because if you look at what Facebook's worth and if someone's saying, well, porn sites are getting more traffic than Facebook, surely that would be worth
Yeah, but there's a lot of
billions.
porn sites, aren't there? It's not like it's just one porn site.
What? So it's kind of broken up over many, you say?
Yeah. Plus, I also think you don't want to be publicly tying yourself to somewhere like Xhamster, because it's a pretty filthy place at the best of times.
If there was that much cash involved,
Yeah, that's true.
Except how do you monetize? I mean, it's interesting talking about those video sites in their varying. How do you monetize what is effectively already pirated content? Because the vast majority of it actually suffers from similar issues.
It's
to
it's basically your page impressions and the adverts on the page. That's where you're making your
What are
money.
you advertising? Who wants to advertise on Xhamster? Because the kind of people that would advertise on Xhamster, they're having their content stolen by X in the first place.
Well, you've already advertised them 4 times in the past sentence.
Yeah, sorry, other porn sites are available, by the way. YouTube, you.
Now he's waiting for.
Did you just open up your bookmarks?
I've told you about this before. Vista is an aggregator of every single one of these video sites. Why bother visiting them all individually?
Oh,
Okay.
right.
When
Vista,
you just,
okay.
Okay,
just go
guys.
to that and it just goes automatically through all of them. It's magical. It's a miracle I'm not blind.
That's VISTA.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Oh, right.
N-U-I-S-T-A.
Yes.
Just want to know what to put as a block on my computer.
Yes, naturally.
In your Cameron block. Extension for Google.
I'm assuming this isn't making it into the final copy, Phil.
I might have to spend some time editing this.
You may have to take some legal advice.
Do you know, actually, before we disappear off this, I've just literally, for the sake of argument, I have opened up Vista site. Do you know the most startling thing about it?
So have I, Ed.
If you look in the corner, it has 3.9 thousand likes on Facebook. Who are these people that go, do you know what, that's amazing, I'm going to like this on Facebook? I mean, that is where pornography meets social networking. Right, I
never want to get a date again in the rest of my life. I'm going to like a porn site on Facebook. Yeah. That's enough tech news for one day, isn't it?
To wrap up the podcast, the next Games podcast edition is coming on the 14th, which is 2 weeks away. With no podcast, let's turn to Steve Hill and Mark. And what have you got games-wise for us?
A couple of stories. Phil Fish, the developer of Fez, has gone into a bit of a Twitter tirade, thrown his toys out his pram, and cancelled Fez 2, which was the big announcement he made at E3 earlier in the year. He's a really controversial character, Phil Fish, and he has a bit of a backstory with Microsoft, locked horns with them a few times. Microsoft famously used to charge developers to put out patches for their games on the Xbox, and he once refused to pay the fee and knowingly put out a patch that had a bug in it that could cause people's games to crash or get corrupt. And he blamed it on Microsoft, and they in fact did actually eventually yield and drop those charges. Whether or not he managed to get his patch out was never made clear, but he was kind of called out the other day by another games journalist on a podcast and called a few unfair and unkind names, shall we say. And he made his announcements on Twitter, and that game looks like it's never going to see the light of day, which is a shame.
I mean, this is the other side of social networking, isn't it? It takes a long time to build up your profile, to build up whatever it is that you're trying to present to people, and it takes 30 seconds of you losing your temper to basically kill it.
Some people wear their heart on their sleeve, and it's social networking is probably not the best place for you to be hanging out and doing your business, shall we say?
It makes it sound like it took a massive dump on Twitter.
And we're back to...
Yeah. Okay, so the other bit of news, and this one confused me, so I think you're going to have to explain this one a little bit. It's EVE in the Online, biggest space battle in history. Great title for the story, but it doesn't really mean much to me.
Yeah, it's a little bit misleading. EVE is basically a massively multiplayer online game where you can be a space pilot in this huge, big, expansive universe and travel the galaxies far and wide, and it's pretty much open for you to do anything you want. I tried to get into the game, but it was incredibly difficult and expensive, as Ed and I were chatting about off air. But this weekend it had one of the biggest space battles I think that have ever been recorded in history, virtual we should say. 4,000 ships were involved, and it was basically two factions fighting it out to see who could control this part of the galaxy, shall we say. And it made kind of big news. It was streamed live on the Twitch network. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. It's quite big for gamers. So records were made and lots of ships were lost.
I love the way you described it as a virtual space battle to differentiate it from like the real ones. Yeah. The ones that are going on right now in a galaxy far, far away. Well, ones we're obviously not invited to.
Yeah, you never know what's going on out there. But yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult game to get into, but it's very, very deep. And I think when you kind of look at it on the face of it, if you've got half an interest in sci-fi, the concept's probably very, very interesting, but the actual reality of it is... I guess it kind of feel a bit like work.
It does look
when
an
you say
awful lot
space
like
battle,
work.
do you mean like there's graphics of ships flying around, blowing up and stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
There is. Although I would say, and there was a little snippet about this last night because I was reading an article about it. That in order, I mean, any of the more sort of savvy people listening to this after it's been recorded will be going, "Hang on, 4,000 anything." An online game in the same place at the same time, to actually make it work without sort of literally everything just disintegrating, they slow time down by 90%. And the result is, if you look, there was actually another.
Is that actual time or virtual time?
I'm afraid that's virtual time.
All right.
Yeah, gutted. And effectively, that means that if you look at the YouTube videos, there was another one of these enormous confrontations a couple of months ago, and you think that's going to look amazing, and actually it looks like what happens when you used to take old PC games and just whack the detail up to sort of 11 out of 10 on a machine that just couldn't handle it, and it just goes into sort of it's a combination of sort of strobe light disco and a computer that looks like it's on the verge of just keeling over. It doesn't look quite as spectacular as you hope it might, I'm afraid.
Sounds rubbish, frankly.
Well, if you wanted an insight, I know obviously it's bad form to suggest looking at a website off the mighty AV forums, but Cracked, the on US sort of comedy website, has over the years run a series of articles, the biggest dick moves in online gaming and so on and so forth. Inevitably, the most appalling thing that somebody's done in these various genres of online gaming, it always winds up with an EVE Online one being number one. So if you want, just search those out. I mean, there's some bloke that set himself up as a bank on this game, which again gives a fairly significant insight into what the game is actually like, and effectively got bored one day and just absconded with and we're talking real money, $140,000 of other people's money, and that
gave their money to some guy they didn't know.
No, they gave their virtual EVE currency to some bloke they didn't know, and he basically just cashed out, and that's completely within the rules of the game.
But it's not real money then.
No, well, it get complicated. I believe he just spent half of it on an enormous ship which couldn't effectively be killed just to annoy people, but he did actually launder money back out of it as well. So, and completely legally.
Oh God, there's some sad people in this planet.
Yeah,
if you are an EVE
live
Online
real
player,
life in a game, what's the fun in that? I've already got a real life full of all the annoyances of real life. I want to, be a large-breasted warrior woman racing around the fields, killing people and cutting heads off and stuff.
The real experience to be had. Yeah, absolutely.
The real Stephen Withers.
He'd still be bald though. Bald with big breasts.
3 shiny orbs. Then, yeah, great.
Well, that tended a little bit of a Sid James laughing, didn't it?
That's a horrifying image.
So to wrap up, Xbox One, a couple of news stories out there.
Yeah, Toys R Us have kind of perhaps let it slip when the Xbox One will be out. They've got it slated down for November 29th, and that's only really significant because most people assumed that it would be sometime mid to end of November. It's that they've got it down as the PS4 for December 13th. A fortnight's difference isn't going to make any real harm to sales. And really, it's very much a non-story. It could just be a kind of placeholder anyway for the retailer. But in addition to that, we've got official news on how much the accessories for the Xbox One will be, and the controller's going to be $60, $59.99. The headset will be $24.99.
Big money.
It is, and a controller plus the play and charge kit will be $75. If you consider the fact that your current 360 pads won't work with it, the headset, you're not going to get a headset in the box anyway, so you've got to buy one anyway, so that's immediately $25. Current headsets are apparently going to work with the Xbox One, but it's still kind of a bit hazy as to whether they're going to put in an adapter that in the box, or whether you've got to pay for that as well. So it's interesting simply because of the fact that Microsoft won great kudos for kind of pushing ahead the online gaming community by actually including a headset with the Xbox 360, and then to kind of take that away at a time when one of the big things about, say, Live is the fact that more people speak on that as opposed to, on the PlayStation 3. It seems a little bit odd that they're taking that away and that they're pricing it, slightly prohibitively.
So what does that? Does that mean that to get the basic setup, you've got to buy the Xbox One, which comes with the Kinect, which you're basically paying extra money for. Then you have to buy another controller. Then you have to buy a headset.
Well, it'll come with one controller in there, but if you want to speak,
so if you want a second controller.
Second controller and then a headset, and if you want,
get £500 roughly, then is it?
It wouldn't matter for you, Steve, because you haven't got any friends, so the one controller would be fine.
I'm not buying Xbox One anyway. going to buy a PS3. Well, Daniel, what's the best guess on the release date for the PS3?
It's already out.
Oh, sorry. What's the best guess for the release date on the PS4?
I mean, Toys R Us got it down December 13th. I would think that's pretty much it. I think most people assumed that it would be beginning of December, sometime around then. I mean, they're not going to miss Christmas, are they?
No, definitely not. I hope not, because it's my Christmas present to myself.
As you sit there on December the 25th.
Are you going to wrap it?
Yep.
Oh,
under the
Steve,
tree.
you shouldn't have.
That's exactly what I did with the Wii, actually.
A Wii or the Wii?
The Wii. Well, both. I like to hold it in before Christmas.
Little treat for yourself in the morning.
I think
Yeah, good luck editing this together, Phil.
We're not doing quotes on the way out, are we?
Yeah, we are.
Honestly, seen Jurassic Park, I think, once. That's it.
Someone used to do Blu-ray reviews. You haven't seen very many movies, have you?
No, I don't like blockbuster Jurassic Park. Okay, right. I'll say it right there.
Masterpiece.
I'll say it there. Jurassic Park is Jurassic Park. Okay, Godzilla takes a massive dump all over Jurassic Park. Does it?
We're back to the specialist sites again.
Yes. In fact, I've just got a quote here. Ian Malcolm, that is one big pile of yeah.
That podcast was one big pile of
So that's it for the AVForums podcast this week. My thanks to Mark Botwright.
You did it, you crazy son of a bitch. You did it.
Steve Withers.
Yeah, but on Pirates of the Caribbean, the pirates don't eat the tourists.
Steve Hill.
For some reason, I'm thinking about Godzilla scat now.
And Ed Selley.
We spared no expense.
So that's it. You can follow us on Twitter at AVForums. You can also like us on Facebook, facebook.com/AVForums. You can also bookmark avforums.com for the latest reviews, news and videos. Plus, why not leave us a rating on iTunes if you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next Wednesday. And this is Philip saying thanks very much for listening.